They were never meant to be found, buried beneath collapsed cities, sealed inside forgotten tombs, locked away in stone and dust for thousands of years. Yet, when these discoveries finally emerged, they carried an impossible message. They did not belong to their time. According to everything we know about human history, these objects should not exist. Their precision is too exact, their complexity too advanced, their purpose too sophisticated for the age in which they were created. And yet there they are, not legends, not myths, but real, physical discoveries examined by archaeologists, engineers, and scientists. Some predict celestial movements with mathematical accuracy rivaling modern computers. Others reveal engineering techniques we still struggle to replicate today. And a few hint at knowledge that seems to leap far ahead of its supposed era. History tells us progress is linear, that humanity crawled forward slowly. Stone tools of bronze, bronze iron, ignorance to knowledge. But what if that story is incomplete? What if advanced knowledge once existed and was lost? Tonight, we explore ancient discoveries that shouldn't exist in their time. To understand how these discoveries challenge history, we must first confront an uncomfortable truth. Much of ancient history is reconstructed from fragments, burned libraries, collapsed empires, civilizations erased by war, famine, or natural disaster. When knowledge disappears, history does not pause. It resets. And when later societies rediscover the ruins of the past, they often assume superiority over what came before. But sometimes the ruins tell a different story. In 1901, off the coast of a small Greek island, sponge divers searching the seafloor made a discovery that would quietly unsettle modern science. Among shattered statues and corroded bronze lay what appeared to be a lump of decayed metal. At first glance, it seemed insignificant, but as it dried and cracked open, something extraordinary was revealed. Inside were gears, not decorative, not symbolic, mechanical, dozens of them, interlocking with mathematical precision. The object would later be known as the Antikythera mechanism. Radiocarbon dating placed it over 2,000 years old, built in ancient Greece, but its design posed an immediate problem. The device was capable of predicting eclipses, tracking planetary movements, and modeling complex astronomical cycles. Nothing like it was supposed to exist until at least the 14th century. For decades, historians dismissed it as an anomaly, a fluke. But as X-ray scans and 3D reconstructions revealed its full complexity, that explanation collapsed. The Antikythera mechanism was not crude. It was deliberate, engineered. It used differential gearing. Technology historians believe was invented over a millennium later, which raises a disturbing question. If this level of mechanical intelligence existed once, how much more was lost? And if knowledge could be lost once, could it have been lost many times? Across the ancient world, similar questions keep emerging. In Egypt, granite boxes were carved with interior angles so precise that modern engineers struggle to replicate them without diamond-tipped tools. In South America, megalithic stones weighing tens of tons were cut, transported, and fitted together with tolerances tighter than a human hair. No mortar, no gaps, just precision. In ancient India, texts describe surgical procedures, including cataract surgery, performed with specialized tools centuries before similar techniques appeared in Europe. In Iraq, a small clay jar containing copper and iron sparked a debate that continues today. When reconstructed, it produces an electrical charge, a battery, nearly 2,000 years old. Each discovery on its own is strange. Together, they form a pattern that suggests ancient civilizations may have possessed advanced knowledge that was later forgotten, dismissed, or destroyed. History is written by survivors, but technology does not lie. It leaves behind evidence, marks in stone, equations hidden in metal, alignments written into the earth itself. The deeper we look, the more uncomfortable the questions become. Were ancient people more technologically advanced than we believe? Or are we underestimating them because we no longer understand their methods? And if they achieve these feats once, what stopped them from continuing? Collapse rarely comes with warning. Empires fall. Cities burn. Knowledge disappears quietly. Libraries are easier to destroy than ideas, but when ideas are not passed on, they die all the same. What we call primitive may simply be what survived, and what we call advanced may be a rediscovery, not an invention. As we move deeper into this documentary, we will examine discovery after discovery, each one carefully dated, studied, and debated, not to rewrite history recklessly, but to question it honestly, because the past is not as simple as we were taught, and some discoveries were never meant to fit. The Antikythera mechanism is often described as a one-off miracle, a brilliant accident, a singular achievement that somehow appeared and then vanished. But history rarely works that way. Technologies do not emerge in isolation. They are built on traditions, schools of thought, generations of trial and error, which means the Antikythera mechanism was not the beginning, it was the survivor. To understand how such a device could exist, we must step back into the world that produced it. Ancient Greece was not merely a land of philosophers and poets. It was a civilization obsessed with measurement, time, motion, the heavens. Astronomers like Hipparchus were mapping the sky with astonishing accuracy. Mathematicians were calculating ratios and cycles that governed celestial movement. Engineers were experimenting with gears, water clocks, and automated systems. This knowledge did not live in isolation. It traveled from Babylonian star charts, from Egyptian geometry, from earlier cultures whose names history barely remembers. The ancient world was far more interconnected than we imagine, and when the Roman Empire later rose to dominance, priorities shifted. Practicality replaced inquiry. Administration replaced experimentation. Libraries closed. Workshops fell silent. The chain of knowledge weakened. Then it broke. Centuries passed before anything resembling the Antikythera mechanism appeared again, not because it was impossible to build, but because the knowledge to imagine had vanished. This same pattern repeats across the ancient world. In Egypt, the construction of massive stone structures remains one of archaeology's most persistent mysteries. The Great Pyramid is not simply large. It is precise. Its base is leveled to within millimeters across hundreds of meters. Its sides align almost perfectly with true north. Its internal chambers follow geometric ratios that appear again and again in advanced mathematics. But what truly unsettles engineers is the stone itself. Granite, one of the hardest stones on Earth, was quarried, transported, and shaped with an accuracy that modern builders struggle to replicate economically. Drill holes show spiral marks suggesting rotational speeds far beyond what copper tools should achieve. Saw marks indicate controlled, consistent pressure. These are not the marks of brute force. They are the marks of method. Yet no definitive tools have been found. No workshops. No instruction manuals. Only results, which leads to an uncomfortable realization. We judge ancient capability by the tools we assume they had, not by the evidence they left behind. And evidence keeps contradicting assumptions. In South America, long before European contact, entire cities were constructed using stones weighing tens, sometimes hundreds of tons. At sites like Sacsayhuaman, blocks are cut with irregular shapes that interlock perfectly, like three-dimensional puzzles. Some stones have more than a dozen angles, all fitting together without mortar. Earthquakes shake the ground. The walls remain. Modern engineers have tested these structures. They flex. They absorb energy. They are not primitive. They are sophisticated. And yet, according to conventional timelines, the civilizations responsible lacked iron tools, wheeled transport, or draft animals. So how was it done? Again, explanations fall back on lost methods, techniques not written down, knowledge passed orally, skills erased when societies collapsed, because collapse was common. Droughts, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, invasions. Civilizations did not fade slowly. They vanished, and when they did, their knowledge went with them. In ancient India, medical texts describe surgical techniques that would not reappear in Europe until the modern era. Procedures for repairing noses, removing cataracts, using anesthetics derived from plants. These were not guesses. They were practiced. Students trained under masters. Tools were designed for specific operations. But as empires shifted and priorities changed, this medical tradition faded from global awareness, not because it failed, but because history moved on without it. Then there is the Baghdad battery, a small clay jar discovered near ancient ruins in Iraq. Inside, a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with acidic liquid, it produces a measurable electric current. Was it intentional? Scholars debate. Some argue it was symbolic. Others say it powered electroplating. What matters is not the conclusion. What matters is the possibility. That ancient people were experimenting with forces we consider modern. That curiosity did not begin with us. The deeper we dig, the more these discoveries begin to speak to one another. Astronomy, engineering, medicine, energy, not isolated flashes of genius, but fragments of a broader understanding, an understanding that rose and fell. History prefers clean narratives, but reality is messy. Progress surges forward, then it collapses, then it begins again. We stand on the ruins of those who came before us, often without realizing it. And as we move forward in this documentary, we will encounter discoveries that push this idea even further. Artifacts that suggest ancient people understood optics, calendars that track time with astonishing accuracy, structures aligned with celestial events so precisely they could only have been built through long-term observation. Each one forces the same question, not whether ancient people were capable, but whether we have underestimated them. Because when knowledge is lost, the future forgets the past was ever advanced at all. Time is invisible, yet every civilization that has ever existed has tried to master it, to predict the seasons, to plan harvests, to align ritual, architecture, and belief with the movement of the heavens. And in the ancient world, some societies achieved a level of timekeeping that borders on the unbelievable. Long before telescopes, long before precision instruments, they watched the sky. For generations. In Central America, the Maya developed one of the most complex calendar systems ever created. It was not a single calendar, but several interlocking cycles. One tracked the solar year. Another followed ritual time. A third counted days across vast stretches of history. When these cycles aligned, they formed patterns that could predict eclipses, planetary movements, and seasonal changes with remarkable accuracy. Modern astronomers have tested the Maya calendar against computer models. It holds. The question is not whether it works. The question is how they achieved it. Without lenses, without metal instruments, without writing down equations as we know them. Their cities were designed as observatories. Temples aligned to solstices. Stairways illuminated by sunlight only on specific days of the year. Time was written into stone. And this was not unique. In ancient Britain, long before written history, stone circles were erected with a precision that continues to puzzle researchers. Stonehenge is not random. Its stones align with the sunrise on the summer solstice and the sunset on the winter solstice. But beyond that, subtle alignment suggests lunar cycles, eclipse prediction, and long-term astronomical observation. Moving stones weighing up to 25 tons across miles of terrain was an extraordinary feat on its own, but arranging them to encode celestial knowledge required something more. Continuity. Generations working toward the same goal. Knowledge passed down accurately across centuries. A single mistake would break the system, and yet it holds. In ancient Egypt, time was measured not only by the sun, but by the stars. Star clocks divided the night sky into segments that allowed priests to tell time with remarkable consistency. Water clocks refined these measurements indoors. Some surviving examples show gradations that adjust for seasonal changes, an understanding of timekeeping most people assume developed much later. Again, the pattern emerges. Observation, refinement, transmission, then interruption. As civilizations fell, their systems were abandoned. The sky remained. The knowledge faded. Ancient optics provide another unsettling example. At sites across the Mediterranean and Middle East, archaeologists have discovered polished crystal lenses. Some magnify, others focus light. In Assyria, a rock crystal lens dating back nearly 3,000 years was discovered. Its curvature suggests it could be used for magnification, or even primitive telescopic observation. Skeptics argue it was decorative, but experimental reconstructions show it works, which forces an uncomfortable idea. What if ancient observers could see more than we assume? What if their understanding of the heavens was aided by tools we rarely credit them with? In China, records describe mechanical clocks powered by water and gears as early as the Tang Dynasty, towering devices that track time, astronomical events, and planetary motion. Some use escapement-like mechanisms centuries before similar technology appeared in Europe. Yet again, these machines disappeared, destroyed during wars, dismantled when dynasties changed, forgotten when priorities shifted. Across continents and cultures, the same story unfolds. Advanced systems emerge. They flourish. Then they vanish, leaving behind artifacts that appear out of place in time. What connects these discoveries is not mystery alone. It is fragility. Knowledge is delicate. It survives only when passed on, written, taught, protected. When those chains break, even the most advanced understanding can disappear in a single generation. We assume our era is different. That progress now is permanent. But history suggests otherwise. And as we continue, we'll explore discoveries that hint at something even more unsettling. Evidence that ancient civilizations may have understood natural forces, electricity, chemistry, materials, in ways we are only now rediscovering. There are forces that shape the world quietly, invisible, unseen. For most of human history, these forces were feared, revered, or misunderstood. Yet in several ancient discoveries, there are signs that people long ago may have begun to understand them, not symbolically, but practically. Electricity is one of them. In the early 20th century, archaeologists working near Baghdad uncovered a small clay jar. At first, it seemed unremarkable, but inside was a copper cylinder, and within that cylinder, an iron rod. When replicas of the object were filled with acidic liquid, vinegar, or fermented wine, they produced a measurable electrical charge, not enough to power cities, but enough to plate metal. This object became known as the Baghdad Battery. Mainstream explanations vary. Some suggest it was a ritual object. Others argue it was used for electroplating jewelry within layers of gold or silver. What matters is not certainty. What matters is plausibility. Because if ancient people were experimenting with electricity, even at a basic level, it challenges our assumptions about when scientific curiosity truly began. And this was not an isolated curiosity. Across the ancient world, evidence of advanced chemical understanding continues to surface. In ancient Egypt, pigments have been discovered that resist fading after thousands of years. Some were synthesized, not naturally occurring. The famous Egyptian blue pigment required controlled heating, precise mixtures, and an understanding of material transformation. This was chemistry. In ancient Rome, concrete was not merely mixed, it was engineered. Roman concrete structures have survived 2,000 years of erosion, saltwater, and earthquakes. Modern concrete, by comparison, often degrades within decades. Analysis of Roman concrete reveals volcanic ash that reacts with seawater to form new minerals over time, making the structure stronger as it ages. This was not accidental. It was knowledge, lost knowledge, and it took modern science centuries to rediscover why it worked. In ancient China, metallurgy reached heights that would not be matched elsewhere for generations. Cast iron was produced and used extensively. Steel was refined through processes that required careful temperature control. Weapons, tools, and infrastructure benefited from this mastery. But political upheaval and shifting dynasties disrupted the transmission of these techniques. Again, progress did not vanish because it failed. It vanished because society changed. Even in ancient medicine, chemistry played a role. Herbal compounds were combined with remarkable precision. Some ancient remedies contained analgesics, antiseptics, and anti-inflammatory agents. Trial, observation, and refinement, hallmarks of science, were already at work. What unites all these discoveries is not that ancient people were secretly modern. It is that intelligence is not tied to time. Curiosity does not belong to one era. When conditions allow it, knowledge grows. When conditions collapse, knowledge disappears. And when that happens, the future often assumes the past was ignorant. But ignorance is rarely the truth. The Earth itself preserves these contradictions. In Antarctica, ice cores reveal climate cycles stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. But long before modern science, ancient maps appear to show something unsettling. The Pyrie Reis map, drawn in the early 16th century, depicts a coastline resembling Antarctica, ice-free. Some scholars argue coincidence. Others point out that it appears based on much older source maps. If true, it suggests ancient cartographers had access to information now lost. Not speculation. Data, accurate latitude, coastlines hidden beneath ice for millennia. Even if debated, the map raises a question that refuses to disappear. How much ancient knowledge was inherited rather than invented? Because civilizations do not emerge from nothing. They build upon what came before. And sometimes they inherit fragments of a forgotten world. As we move deeper, the discoveries become more controversial. Not because they are fantastical, but because they blur the line between what we believe is possible and what evidence suggests may have occurred. The past is not a straight road. It is a series of rises and collapses, peaks of knowledge followed by silence. And the silence is what confuses us, because silence looks like absence, but absence is often just loss. When we imagine ancient engineering, we often picture effort without efficiency, thousands of laborers, simple tools, sheer force overcoming nature through numbers alone. But some ancient structures challenge that image completely. They suggest not just strength, but understanding of materials, of resonance, of forces that act quietly but powerfully. High in the mountains of Peru, enormous stone blocks sit fitted together with such precision that a blade cannot pass between them. Some weigh over 100 tons. They were quarried miles away, transported across uneven terrain, lifted into place without mortar, and yet they remain intact after centuries of earthquakes. Modern engineers study these walls and reach the same conclusion. They were designed to move, slightly, to absorb seismic energy. This is not primitive construction. It is adaptive engineering. In ancient Egypt, similar questions surround the transportation and placement of massive stone blocks. Traditional explanations rely on sledges, ropes, and manpower, but these explanations struggle to account for the speed, scale, and precision involved. Some blocks were raised into place with tolerances tighter than modern construction standards. Others were cut with surfaces so smooth they reflect light. Recent studies suggest ancient builders may have exploited natural forces, reducing friction, using counterweights, understanding balance in ways not fully documented. Not magic, physics. In the ancient Mediterranean, architects discovered ways to amplify sound without electronics. Greek amphitheaters were designed so a whisper on stage could be heard clearly by thousands. Curved stone seating, carefully calculated slopes, materials chosen for resonance, acoustic engineering, still studied today. And then there are places where stone seems to respond to sound itself. At certain ancient sites, rocks emit ringing tones when struck. Some researchers suggest these stones were selected deliberately, that ancient builders understood vibration and resonance, not mathematically, but experimentally, through repetition, trial, listening, knowledge encoded not in writing, but in tradition. In Cambodia, the temples of Angkor were not just religious centers. They were hydraulic machines, a vast system of canals, reservoirs, and water management infrastructure designed to control floods, store water, regulate agriculture across entire regions. Satellite imaging reveals patterns invisible from the ground, complex planning, long-term environmental engineering. And yet, when the climate shifted, the system collapsed. Maintenance failed. The knowledge to adapt was lost. Angkor was abandoned. Across the world, similar stories unfold. The Nabateans carved entire cities into stone and developed water systems that captured and stored rainfall in one of the harshest environments on Earth. They flourished. Then trade routes changed. Their expertise faded. Cities emptied. Nature claimed what knowledge had built. These civilizations were not doomed by lack of intelligence. They were undone by circumstances. And when they fell, Their methods vanish with them, leaving behind results that seem impossible without context. This is why so many ancient discoveries feel out of place, because we see the outcome, but not the process. And without the process, we assume impossibility. But the earth remembers. The stones remain. The alignments still point to the sky. The mechanisms still turn when carefully restored. As we approach the end of this journey, one truth becomes clear. Ancient discoveries that shouldn't exist in their time are not evidence of lost supercivilizations or forgotten myths. They are evidence of something more human. That intelligence rises wherever curiosity is allowed to flourish. That progress is not guaranteed. And that knowledge, once lost, leaves behind puzzles that haunt the future. We are not the first to question the universe, nor will we be the last. The past was not simple. It was complex, fragile, and far more advanced than we often dare to admit. And perhaps the greatest mystery is not how ancient people achieved these feats, but how easily the world forgot they ever did. If this exploration changed the way you see history, subscribe to Ages Past, because the past is not finished speaking, and there are still many discoveries waiting to be remembered. History often presents itself as settled, dates memorized, timelines fixed, progress neatly arranged. But the deeper we look, the more that certainty begins to dissolve. Ancient discoveries that shouldn't exist in their time are not mistakes in history. They are reminders that intelligence is not owned by the present, that curiosity did not begin with modern science, and that progress is far more fragile than we like to believe. Civilizations rise, not because they are destined to, but because conditions allow knowledge to grow. They fall, not because people become ignorant, but because knowledge is interrupted. War, climate, collapse, forgetting. When those interruptions happen, even the most advanced understanding can vanish within a single lifetime. And when future generations uncover what remains, they often underestimate what came before, because they no longer understand how it was achieved. Stone becomes impossible. Mechanisms become anomalies. Precision becomes mystery. But mystery is often just context that was lost. The ancient world was not primitive waiting to become modern. It was complex, experimental, and capable, sometimes in ways we are only now rediscovering. What we call advanced today may one day be misunderstood as well, because progress does not move forward forever. It resets, and somewhere beneath the ruins of the past, there may still be answers we have not learned to recognize. If you've stayed with us until now, you already understand something most people never question, that history is not finished, and neither is the search for what was forgotten. Subscribe to Ages Past for more lost knowledge, ancient mysteries, and the stories buried beneath time, because the past is not silent. We simply have to listen.